Hello everyone, welcome to the third part of the flat bottom brewer test. Last time we brewed our El Faro estate coffee from Colombia, washed coffee, and that's where we picked the top two, which were the April Brewer and the Torch Mountain. Kalira did a great job as well. Now, we can always, with all those methods, adapt the recipe, right, and have a delicious brew. But here I really wanted to fix that recipe and find the most appropriate brewer for our kind of coffee, because there's so many parameters that we need to fix. We need to decide on fixing some. And the first thing I fix is obviously my roast profile, because I'm doing this for our subscribers, our viewers, and our coffee and our QC process. And then fixing a system so that we can really taste the difference in the geometry or the shape. And those two presented a really similar cup profile, even though the extraction was a little bit different in terms of percentage. We really see like both a very, very more balanced brew with each one of them a little bit uniqueness to it. What we can say through those tastings, starting from 4 and 3 and now the top 2, is that I tend to really see the advantage of having a larger hole in the bottom of the flat bottom brewer to allow a little bit more flow. That's one thing. Lifting that paper filter so that it avoids being clogged or being kind of stuck to the bottom of the filter is also a good advantage. And here the difference between those two really, because on the Torch Mountain you can include also the Oria brewer there, even though the material is a little bit different, the angle is pretty similar. And that's the main difference really. It's the angle, the opening, the aperture, well, I don't know, like the opening of the Calera filter. So for this third one, and I will also do a fourth one in video, for this third one, I'm using our Benko Gotiti natural processed Ethiopian coffee. It's our lightest roast, and here I am at 92 degrees on my water, the same water, except here we are diving into natural processed coffee. So let's start by doing our 50 grams bloom. And I may also do a tasting with larger brews. But the thing is, he will be very limited, especially on the Torch Mountain Oria brewers. Those are quite small brewers. You cannot brew a huge amount. But usually when I brew, let's say 20 grams and 300 or 330, I do 3 equal pour. So we might do like a small dose, like a 12 grams, 200, with 3 equal pours instead of 4. That's something we can also experiment. All right, my second pour of 50 grams. And here, because the angle is a little bit steeper on the Torch, it's kind of easier to pour around, right? Because you have less area to pour, less diameter in that circle. So it's a little bit easier to pour those 50 grams. However, the coffee bed is a little bit deeper, which once again, we talk about it, can kind of place those grounds in those waves and create a little bit more risk of bypass channeling, etc., etc., which makes me want to kind of pour towards the filter a little bit more. Versus on the April brewer, the flow, the circular flow, almost kind of grab those grounds, because you always have some grounds on the waves, right? But because the April brewer is a little bit more open, when I'm pouring with larger circle, that flow kind of brushes those grounds in those waves a little bit more naturally. Here I also opted for different grinder. I'm using my Comandante this time instead of my Deering. And we are I'm using a red clicks at 55, so which is about 26, 27 clicks on a classic Comandante. All right. And I'm not going to swirl to really see how those brewers perform, because swirling can also add some, extraction and agitation. And do I swirl the same ways in both the brewers? That's where the more there's kind of manual participations, the less consistent we can be. So I really try to minimize my impact here. That's why I go for 4 pours, or even I want to go to 3 pours or 2 equal pour, so that we let the nature, the gravity, do its job. All right. And here I am done on my torch at 322. Once again, those two are really, really similar. 322, let me take a note. And our April brewer at 326. So once again, very similar end time. Those little seconds, there's no real impact of that when it's just like few seconds. It can be due to the first pour, it can be due to when I start the timer. So 5 seconds, even 5, 6, 7, up to 10 seconds, it's not really significant. Let's give it a smell. All right. Very similar intensity once again, not a huge difference in those coffees. I'm gonna give it another sniff, but in a sort of Pinot cup. A bit more intensity on the torch, and more gentle, a little more medium on the April brewer. And on the April brewer, we have mostly very light floral and fruit notes. And on the torch is like what you expect, basically. So the April really emphasize the floral more, and we have a nice balance on the torch with more berries and florals. All right, let's give it a taste for sweetness now. I mean, it's a natural, so it's going to be quite tough here. Same. I see. It can be a little bit confusing, because one is more acidic than others, but that doesn't mean it's sweeter. I got it. Okay. So here it's both very high sweetness, but slightly higher on the April than the torch, and we have higher acidity on the torch, a little bit more mellow and balanced on the April. Now bitterness, let's check for bitterness. There was a little hint of bitterness in the torch, but really not significant. No, not even. No, we can't really say that one is bitter than the other. They both really very low in bitterness. So on the general taste balance, we have slightly more sweetness on the April, but slightly more acidity and brightness on the Torch Brewer. So it's still a tie. Now let's taste for texture. And here I already have like an idea as I was tasting. So our Torch Brewer is quite syrupy, very like a berry syrup, heavy but not creamy, not milky, and not juicy. So really like that medium plus, like in intensity that would be a 3.5 out of 5. The April Brewer it's a little bit, here it's really the quality of the body that is really pleasant. It's very round and silky. That's really something I picked up a lot from the April Brewer, is that silkiness of the texture, which it's not related to the body, the intensity, the viscosity, or the thickness. It's more about the quality of that body. Because on the intensity, that would be more like syrupy or minus or juicy plus. Here we will be like in that medium 3 out of 5. So slightly below the Torch Brewer. Let's check for the aftertaste. But all in all, they both really good. They really express the coffee well. Just in different ways. I feel like I'm gonna have to do a lot of episodes on those, because it's really hard to pick out my preference. So the length now. Really juicy, really sweet on the Torch. But it's kind of, it goes up and then it slowly dies. It's quite a lower finish in terms of, but it's very clean, but it's just a little bit lower. So I draw some shapes on the sensory assessment that you can download and see, and it's basically how the flavor sort of travels throughout my tongue. More lingering for sure. More lingering for sure on the April Brewer. But then have that spike, right? So on one side, the Torch, and that's where we now going to talk about flavors. The Torch really has like this increase in flavor, and that it is prominent of natural processes. So you really have like those those red fruits that pops in. Like you recognize immediately, okay, this is a natural process Ethiopian. Berries, oranges. And flavor intensity is quite intense, like a 4.5 out of 5. But it dies a little bit quicker. Some vanilla on the finish as well, sweetness. Very pleasant, very what you expect out of a natural Ethiopian coffee. And this is a grade 1 Benko Gotiti, which is our kind of all-time bestseller that we have year after year. So this floral now. This one intensity will be, if the other one was a 4.5, this will be a 4. And here you see there's no one particular that kind of gets into your palate first. In the torch, it was really like the berries, then the oranges, and then the vanilla in a sequence. Here, it's very balanced, very homogeneous. And the torch was a bit more pronounced. So, because at the end of the day, it's how I like it, right? I will really choose the one that I prefer the most. I don't know. I really don't know. I will still keep those two. We are going to do a 4th episode on kind of fancier coffees, geishas and stuff, and like anaerobic processes coffees. And we will also probably do another episode on different, maybe a recipe to see really which one is a little more versatile. But from like those 3 tastings, what we can see is that on the flat bottom style, the April Brewer presents a real kind of balance in flavor, body, sweetness, acidity, etc., etc. So you really have like a balance of those elements, which makes it really pleasant, very not as aggressive as other kind of brewers in terms of flavor intensity and taste intensity. The torch presents really well the characteristic of the coffee, which is one of our values, right? Presenting the terroir. And you can really taste whatever we have on cupping. So on one side, the torch really presents well the way we describe coffee as coffee professionals, yet the April Brewer create an amazing tasting experience. So I still don't know which one I'm gonna pick as my only one flat bottom brewer. But see you next time for another tastings.